Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Good morning, Peter.
Morning, Bill. Hello, everybody.
That was a little lame, but my wife's in the other room working, and I don't want to be on her video. So
yeah, don't be screaming, right?
I decided to go. Yeah, I decided to not jump up and down for glee like I normally do and get all excited. But I'm really excited about today, Peter, because this is episode number 378. 378, and as you can see, I'm kind of on a sabbatical. I'm in a little tiny room here the last couple podcasts, and I'm doing my thing, but I'm going to move in a couple weeks into a new place. So it's pretty cool, right?
Oh, yeah, that's great.
The name of today's podcast is Creative Real Estate Rules for Rookies Revealed Today. So here we go. Here is the description. Have you ever felt like there's a secret rule book that the top pros have, but don't really share it, leaving everyone else behind? Imagine actually getting your hands on this coveted playbook and give you a quantum leap and skipping the beginner stages in creative real estate. No one, Peter, no one has organized these simple rules and put them in one spot to date. Just join us today and dive deep into the coolest industry on planet Earth, creative real estate. So if you are curious about the pros, I'll give it to you again. If you are curious about how the pros think about their deals, and why they are so successful, we have you covered. Get ready to unlock some of the simplest strategies to make you rich, which will unveil, once we unveil these everyday concepts, you will not be on the outside looking in any longer. If you are ready to transform your financial future quicker than you think, listen to what is uncovered today in this podcast. Why not choose the shortest path of resistance? This is a single best game changer that could work for you easier than you think. Just push the play button now. But if you're already listening to this, you push the play button, right?
I hope so, unless you're like some kind of clairvoyant and pull out the frequencies.
It amazes me, man. I write that, I practice it, I go over it, I kind of, drill it out a couple times, and yet I still make mistakes with it, right?
Well, I think you can't read your lousy pencil handwriting on yellow paper. They have these things called computers, and that you can type on them. If you make a mistake, you put this button delete. You can make it big, you can make it bold, but we got to write pencil on paper.
Could you imagine that? 378 podcasts. I hand wrote every one of them. I didn't use a computer for not one single one of them.
Staples is happy selling you yellow pads.
All right, so let's do our housekeeping stuff. So first of all, thank you for being here, and make sure you push the subscribe button so you know when we're broadcasting, which is once a week. Very, very often, like 99.9% of the time, we record Thursday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can catch us or speak to us on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We're not doing Twitter anymore, not for any other reason other than I've never had anybody communicate with us on Twitter, so we just stopped using it. So, but you can go there, and wherever you can type on that platform, in the comment section or below the video or wherever it is, it will come right to us during the podcast. So if you have questions about the podcast or what we're saying, I will gladly answer them. Also, I've shouted out to the listeners, but they don't seem to respond, so it makes me wonder if I'm not doing a good job of shouting out, or maybe we're doing a really good job of the topics, but if you wanted to communicate to us personally about something other than the topic we're talking about with the podcast, you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, top right-hand side, there's a support link there. But I've asked the listeners to give me topics to talk about, because we could just go over whatever it is that they're having trouble with, right? Mm-hmm. So if they're going through the process of creative real estate, or they want to know more, or there's something they feel like we should cover, then I wish you would send a support ticket. Mm. I know that there's a lot of people out there that try to communicate about creative real estate, but I know in the background we are trying to make it a standard process. Mm. Like, for example, I'm kind of only half working right now, which is one of the excitements of real estate, because I've managed to take like 5 or 6 months off, right? So, I mean, I'm working, but I'm not working, right?
Yeah.
So, my point is like the next thing that I'm going to roll out, which has nothing to do with this podcast, the next thing I'm going to roll out is a model offer. Like, I'm going to make a checklist of what you do to make an offer.
Oh.
So, like, when you're making an offer, you just kind of go down the checklist and you get everything standardly done. Like, as you go through the offer, like, make sure you do this, and make sure you do that, and make sure you do this, and make sure you do that. So when you're going through the offer, you don't miss anything.
Yeah.
So that's my next release. So, anyways, yeah. If you have any questions or you need anything, you can send us a support ticket. Also, if you go to WhatsApp Messenger, you can get part of our group. It's called Let's Talk Real Estate. Mm-hmm. Anyways, enough of that. I got distracted because I got the window open and I'm looking at a guy that was last week. He was thrown out of his house, but now I see he's back.
He was thrown out of the house?
Yeah, they had a big fight on the front.
And why do you know all of this?
Because they were out there yelling and screaming, and the cops came and everything, and they were yelling at one another. So
and saying, "Get
all
out!"
right, Pete. So let's stop scooching around. What if I told you I have broken the creative real estate business down to 7 main philosophies or rules to have mega success?
That'd be good.
Cool, right?
Well, it's good to, all the things you do that, qualify and quantify. Put things in a list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have so much stuff swimming in our head. And not to diverge too much, talk about making a checklist next time or sometime. I had somebody we know supposedly has a house for sale with somebody, and the information is horrible. How much is the house? I don't know. What's the address? I'm not sure. And where are they going? I don't know.
Did you call Brad?
Of course. It's like it's always useless. Sorry, it's always useless. It's like, what do they want to do? I don't know. Has no data. I can buy your house. Like, okie dokie. Anyways. A checklist would be
That's why I'm going to make. That's why I'm going to make the checklist so you don't have to. But
yeah.
But what I'm talking about today is the 7 main philosophies, right? And they're not philosophies. They're like things that they're more than philosophies. It's not how you think. It's because words are important. Words affect how you think, and how you think affect how you react or actually take action.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have the words wrong, then you'll think wrong, and your actions will be wrong.
Yep.
Right? So what I'm trying to do today is to try to get your thinking in the right lane, right? Mm-hmm. So that when you're working, the actions are correct.
Sure.
Like you just said. And so when you're talking to a seller, you're not just arbitrarily talking to them and not getting the right data.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So basically the reason why I'm doing this is because of my definition of success. So my definition of success is doing more right things than wrong.
Yep.
So why wouldn't we make sense? Why wouldn't it make sense to our listeners to have a simple rule book of successful actions as their main playbook? So they could do, like, what are the successful actions? So I've culled it down to these 7 categories of successful actions that are the root or the foundation of how you should think and how you should act. Right? Which means if they truly concentrated on these things that I'm going to talk about today, they can think and grow their real estate portfolio fairly quick.
Sure.
Right?
Well, if you don't do that, if you don't have 7 things to follow, I think we probably have 50 things floating in our heads.
Yeah.
Right? And which one comes first? What should I do? It's like 50 things floating, and it's just nuts.
So I have a new take on this, and I'm going to divert for 1 second. And I'm sorry, I'm going to apologize to my listeners, but because I divert, and maybe they like that, maybe they don't. I don't know.
That could be gems.
But
These could be gems. Do it.
I have to tell you, I wrote an email the other day. God knows why. I just sat down and I'm like, I need to write this email. So it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago. I haven't been writing as much because I'm kind of on my sabbatical, right? And it kind of went like this. Look, if you have any idea what creative real estate is, and you've studied it just a little bit, you can do it. I mean, if you rented a house before from a landlord, right, in your past life, or in your past this life, right, is what I'm trying to say, you're 90% of the way there with creative real estate. I mean, you could rent from someone and then sublease it to someone and make money.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Here's my point. If you have just a little bit of knowledge about creative real estate, I feel like you absolutely, positively owe it to this world to use it. Because our economy sucks right now, and it's going to get worse. And you owe it to the buyers and the sellers and the money people to use your skill to improve our economy. Because it will improve our economy. And I'm going to touch on this in a little while, but you owe it. You owe it to the world. You owe it to your family. You owe it to you owe it to the seller, to the buyer, the money guy, your family. You deserve it. You have a responsibility to do it and not fail. And if you fail, you have a responsibility to, like, brush yourself off and say, I'm glad I failed. Look at the lesson I learned, and keep going. And not introvert and cave in and head for apathy about it, you know, or put in false data. You make a mistake and you put in false information. You dub in some sort of thing and you make up this idea in your head. Well, if I do that, then, you know, it's kind of like falling off of a bicycle when you're 6 years old, and the rest of your life realizing that, you know, bicycles are not good, or you got all these weird ideas about bicycles because you fell off of it when you were like 6 years old. When the truth of the matter is, if you actually go back and inspect why you fell off the bicycle, you're going to find out, oh, there was construction and they had the sidewalk tore up, and you know, your tire went off 2 inches and it caused you to, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was not even your fault.
Yep.
Anyways, that's my little rant this morning, because you owe it to the economy. You owe it to, you just need to do it. You need to stop dinking around, and you need to take responsibility for it and just do something. Call a seller and talk to them. You owe the world that. And the world will be a better place because you do that. You'll help the seller. You'll help the buyer. You'll help a money guy if you use him. You'll help the economy. You'll help your family. There's nothing bad about it. There's no downside, other than your ego. Like, somebody might say something to you and hurt your ego, or you'll be a baby about your feelings and be like, oh, well, and you'll whine about it. Like, that's the only bad thing that can happen.
Yep.
Especially if you're doing the slot deals and stuff. You can't legally get in trouble. There's no bad there. So anyways, that's what I'm talking about. A little bit of a rant there, but let's get started. So number one, real estate, the This is number one on the list.
Yep.
Now, pay attention. Now, the order isn't significant other than how I think.
Okay.
So, it's funny I would pick this one first. Real estate is made to take money out of it, not put money into it.
Yes.
Okay, so that's an easy statement. I said that for a lot of podcasts. And then something happened. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I was on a call, and it made me realize that that statement is a cool little, like, jingle. But I realized by someone talking to me that it wasn't fully understood. So I released it on a couple podcasts, but I'm going to do it right here. Here's what I mean by that statement. So it's not about other people's money, because that's the dark side the realtors want to give us. Well, or sellers. Sellers have told me, well, you want to finance because you don't have money,
Right.
or you can't get money. Like they're condemning me because I don't have money, or I'm not financially as secure as they are.
Yep.
Right? Which I didn't put that on. I didn't put that in the sheet, but I should have. Don't put a seller on a pedestal. If you do, the only thing they can do is look down on you.
Yep.
Right? So don't do that. But, and especially when you start dealing with sellers that have $1 million houses and, $800,000 houses, those are the best deals, right? All right, so once you understand this concept, don't put money into real estate, just take it out.
Sure.
Here's what I mean about that. You're talking to a seller, right? They own the house, don't they?
Sure.
That means that they went through the process of buying the house, didn't they?
Sure. And all the money.
That means the money's already in the deal.
It's financed.
Isn't it?
It's financed.
Well, it doesn't have to be financed. It could be a free and clear deal.
Yeah.
It could be a probate deal. Who knows? All I'm saying is the money's already in the deal. Yeah. It could be like they inherited the house from grandpa that paid for it in 1901. Doesn't matter. The money's in the house.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter that it was $2,000 and now it's worth $200,000 or $2 million. I had dinner with a girl last night. I met a girl that I used to work with at a company I used to work with out in California. I met her last night. She's in town, and she called me up and like, hey, let's have dinner. So, anyways, we're sitting at a table, and at the table is one of her girlfriends. Because she had her and her husband, and there was a couple other people there, right? And this girl tells me that she lives like outside of San Francisco. So I'm fascinated. I'm like, San Francisco?
Yes.
Ugh, how could you afford to be in San Francisco?
Seen that on the news.
Right. So, long story short, she's like, oh, well, it's not really the way you think. She lives in a suburb. And anyways, she said, oh, yeah, when my husband and I went out there, we paid like $235,000 for the house. I'm like, okay. She goes, yeah, we just had it appraised. She says it's worth $1.5 million.
Unbelievable.
Right?
Unbelievable.
So she's like, we're renting, we're getting a camper. We're going to travel the United States a bit, and we're going to go check places out. So when we sell the place, because I'm like, well, the problem is if you sell the place, how do you replace it? And she's like, oh, no. They're going to rent a camper. They're going to drive around the country. They're going to find where they want to live. They're going to take their $1.5 million, and they're going to like go live there, which was pretty cool, right? So it's interesting.
The things that people come up with.
The point is that the money's already in the house, the $235,000, and she probably owes less than that because they've been living there for a while. The money's already in the house. So as creative real estate people, right, you have to understand this concept. The money is already there. So many new creative real estate people or real estate people think, oh, I have to have assets. I have to have capital. I have to have a private money lender. No, the money is already in the deal. Right?
Yeah.
And once you realize this, it opens the doors to the biggest and most powerful tool that every rich person uses. Leverage.
Yep.
Read Donald Trump's books on real estate. It's not all his money.
Oh, hell no. Those guys, the commercial people, they don't build a $20 million building or buy one to go to the bank or get a loan. There's all kinds of people involved in loans and deals and kickbacks or whatever they have to do, right?
I had lunch the other day with a 71. Well, I've been having lunch with her because I've been going to the same restaurant. But for a week now, I've been having lunch with this 71-year-old lady who decided to become an attorney at 45 or 50 years old, and then decided she wanted to do real estate. She's now worth $200 million.
Unbelievable.
Right? She tells me about these shopping plazas that she buys for $21 million. She just told me yesterday, I had lunch with her yesterday, that they're buying another shopping mall. Right? Why is she buying another shopping mall? Well, my son, who's my partner, is in the mortgage business, and it's kind of slow right now in the mortgage business, so we don't want to go a year and say we didn't buy a property that year. So we need to buy a piece of property. Because she was telling me that she looked at the shopping mall before and they turned it down and now they're back looking at it again. Anyway, so the point is that money guys are money guys. They don't understand real estate. So if the money's in, if the bank owns the property, the money's already in the property, they want their interest. They want their money. They want to keep it working.
Yeah.
They already did the hard part of vetting you out and making sure the property's worth it and blah, 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 blah. They just want their checks.
They like the loans. My wife and my son worked at banks. They want the tellers to sell loans and mortgages. The tellers. Right. They're tellers. Right. They want them because they want to own the real estate for the interest.
So why would you want to redo all the work that was originally put in, right, when the money's already there? You just need to learn how to leverage that capital correctly and show the seller how if they sell for cash and get the money replaced like the realtor system does, how they lose 12 to 15%. They're taking a discount for the cash.
Yeah.
Right? So on a $200,000 house, that means it's costing them at least $25,000 or $30,000. We'll say conservatively at 10%, it's costing them $20,000. It costs them $20,000. $20,000 out of the $200,000 to get their cash.
Mm-hmm.
That's a significant fine for wanting to get their cash. So we come along and say, well, not only are we going to save you that $20,000, you can keep that money because we'll give it to you, right? Mm-hmm. On a slot deal, especially on a slot deal. Mm-hmm. But we're going to show you how you can make cash flow. We're going to show you how you can get principal pay down on your mortgage if you have one, how you can get capital gains, how you can get appreciation. So by the time you get to the end of 3 years, instead of getting $170,000, which is 15%, you're going to get $280,000. So you make an extra $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I start this podcast off by saying, if you understand this, you have the responsibility to get out there and tell people about this because they don't know. The money's already in the deal. What you just got to do is you got to re-educate the seller a bit and show them how they could get the best advantage for this asset. Okay? So I know I ranted on that a bit, but that's very important.
No, that's big.
If you don't get that straight in your head.
That's big.
And you're being condemned by the realtor or by the seller by saying, oh, you don't have enough money, that's why you do creative real estate. No, the reason why you do creative real estate is, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, the reason why you do creative real estate is so you can leverage yourself the most possible way, the biggest possible way you can think of. Because if you borrow money from banks, sooner or later they're going to shut you off and say your debt to income is not working.
Sure.
Right?
So, Bill, I thought that the best answer you could tell one of these greedy sellers that think you don't have any money, the best answer is, I make a lot more money in the financing.
That's right.
You get way more money when I do it my way with the financing than buying cash your way.
It's interesting because I have trouble with that because I call it creative real estate because that's what people know it as, but it's really creative financing.
Yeah.
When you talk about creative financing, that opens the door. That's kind of like saying, oh, spirit. Like I have a spirit, or I am a spirit, or I have a soul, or there's too many words connected to it, and it doesn't.
It's a lot of confusion.
Really communicate.
It's a lot of confusion attached to it.
Right.
So it's
Right.
creative real estate purchasing financing system, which is too long. So things get short. It happens in music. They shorten things down until you don't really understand it. The long name is too long. They shorten it, and it doesn't even make sense. But it's creative real estate financing, purchasing houses, blah 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 blah. Anyway.
All right, good. Number 2. Knowing what creative real estate actually is can be a quantum leap for most once they hear this. So what is creative real estate? Right, let me explain. When you're replacing current capital in real estate, you need banks or money people because you're replacing the money, right? These people care about the property's worth and the condition. After all, they want to protect their huge interest-driven machine. Very careful words there, right? They want to protect their huge interest-driven machine.
And you're talking about the bank.
I'm talking about whoever lends money.
Yeah, the lender. Yeah.
The bank is the big one.
Yeah, I thought you meant the seller for a second. That's what I'm clarifying. So the banks, they got the interest-driven machine. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I said already, if you leverage real estate with the paperwork, right? So in other words, when you're buying a house and you're replacing the cash, it's all about location. It's all about condition. It's all about what does it look like. It's all about has it been well maintained? Like does the furnace work? Is the driveway smashed? Is the roof leaking? Like all the physical things, because that's what keeps the valuation for the money guy to lend. Because they want to know if they take it back, how easy will it be on the market? Which is where I came up with the term, how popular will it be with your buyer?
Oh.
Because the banks are evaluating your property to see how popular will it be if they bring it to the market. So if you default and it's got broken windows and no heat, no furnace and no roof, it's not going to be very popular. But if it's like a 5,000 square foot house on the beach in perfect condition and the waves and then it's like, oh, well, it's going to be very popular, especially if it's $100,000, right? It's going to be super popular. Everybody's going to want it. They'll be fighting over it, right? And that's what the bank is trying to do, right?
Well, that's their collateral.
Exactly.
So they want to make sure the collateral's in good shape.
So the interesting thing in creative real estate is we pay attention to none of that until way later in our process. We do look at it, but it's the last thing we do. See, what we want to do is we want to control the paperwork that controls the property, right?
Yeah.
And we do that with things like agreement for deeds, option agreements. An option agreement means that you have the right to buy, but not the obligation to buy, right? Owner financing, right? These are devices that control the property. Some of them have more responsibility than others because when you put a deed in your name or in your company's name or your entity's name, you own it. It's like it's not as easily. And it's not as easy for you to get rid of it if you don't want it.
Yeah, you can't just walk away when your name's on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you can, but there's ramifications, and what most people worry about is those ramifications will affect their other assets.
Yeah.
Right? So it could be more than just giving back the house. It could be like, oh, not only did you give back the house, but you still owe us, Like, for example, what most people don't know is when you go into foreclosure and you give back a house and they forfeit $150,000. Next year, when you do your taxes, you now, instead of having now that $150,000, the bank says, oh, that's an asset now because you no longer lie. So now you owe taxes on $150,000 because they're showing the government, well, you made $150,000 because you were relieved of that debt. So the government looks at that as an income.
That happens to people. I didn't know that part. That in foreclosure, the next year people have to pay the part that they were forgiven.
Yeah, or if they sell the house, the house is worth $150 and they sold it for $120, and there's a $30,000 or there's a $30,000, then you get taxed on the $30,000.
So even when the bank sells the house and gets their money,
you
have to pay because you got off the
Well,
hook.
no, if they get all the money, then you check with your accountant. I'm just telling you that I've had many people. There's a certain way, and I forgot the names of it because I haven't done it in a while. But when you do short sales, there's a short way, which means you buy the property for less money than what the bank owes.
Well, if they have an advantage, if they somehow they got relieved of something and they walked away, they're responsible for it. Right. No free rides. I get it. Okay, whatever that number is.
So basically, what I'm telling you here is this is another leverage point. So what we pay attention to in creative real estate is the paperwork that controls it.
Yep. So
what we want to do is we go into a deal not caring about anything with the house. Like when I'll train like you go on Facebook Marketplace and you go look for a house and you just send messages, like to landlords, to people that are renting houses. You can send a message on Facebook that says, would you be willing to rent for a year or two and then sell me the house, right? Mm-hmm. That's a way to find leads for free, right? When you do that, you don't look at the house. You don't spend 10 minutes looking at the house, see if it's a house you want to buy. No, what you do is you just take the first 25 houses in the screen, on the right, and you just text them. Because what we're looking for is a seller that is flexible, that is willing to listen to us, explain to them how much more money they could make if they left the money in the house and didn't need you to replace the cash. Which, by the way, if they need cash, a lot of our sellers will, when they see they're going to make $100,000 over the course of 3 years on a $200,000 house, all of a sudden needing cash becomes irrelevant. They go to the bank and they get a HELOC loan, or they refinance it, or they find another way to go buy that new house because they don't want to take. They need $20,000 to go buy a new house, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want to give up $100,000 to get that $20,000. They'll go find the $20,000 somewhere else and keep the $100,000. Do you understand?
Yeah, good point.
So you need to understand the importance or the significance of this, because if you don't, you won't be tenacious at getting deals, the right deals. You won't push the seller into doing it because you think that you're a second-class citizen because you're begging for money. And this is not true. When you understand what I'm telling you right now, that they need to keep the money in the house, right? And then let you control the house with paperwork. They walk away. They have no more obligations, no landlord obligations. They just become the bank. And you control the property with the paperwork. You keep the money of the original investment in the property, and you control it with an option or a lease option or an agreement for deed or seller financing or owner financing, and you allow that. You give them tremendous benefit for waiting for their money. And you need to understand that when you get these concepts, like they're really ingrained in you, you make more deals. Is this making sense?
I'm laughing only because it takes so long for us rookie-ish type people to get this through our heads, and we have to convey this to somebody on the phone in 20 minutes, and they don't always get it. Or they have another idea. But it's so true. I mean, I've talked to people that we could do, if you hang on to the house for a few years, look at all the money. Yeah, but I need the money to buy the other one. And I go, oh, and I forget this little point that they could get the HELOCs. I know you said it, but in the middle of things, like, oh shit, I forgot to that they could do that.
Yeah, it's your obligation to help this seller make the most amount of money they can. And the way they do that is leave the money in the property and allow you to control it with paperwork. I mean, why do you think Nelson Rockefeller would say, right, the only way to make, well, he said, I forgot the beginning portion of it, but it's like, it has something to do with assets.
Yeah.
But anyways, he said, own nothing but control everything.
Yeah.
And that's how the rich stay rich.
Well, you make the money that way, but you don't get in trouble if something happens with the property. You know, somebody falls down, you go, who owns this thing? Oh, it's not him. Somebody else has to pay the lawsuit or whatever it is. It's less responsibility. Right. And still the money in your pocket.
The point is that real estate is made to take money out of it, not put money into it. And if you understand that first concept, that the money's already there, now what you want to do is you don't care about the property. I mean, you need to make sure it's going to be a popular property when you go sell it. So you don't want to buy, you know, a 10,000 square foot house with 1 bedroom and 2 bathrooms, obviously, right? So you need to not be stupid about it, but at first you need to understand that the sellers you need to get the seller to understand leaving their money in the property and being flexible with their cash flow will make them a shit ton of money. And it will change their lives. And it's your obligation, your responsibility, your duty as a creative real estate citizen to make sure they understand that and not allow them to be bamboozled by the realtor system, right? Which is a monopoly, because if you want to sell a house, where do you go? To the realtor system. They're the only game in town. There is no other game in town unless they talk to somebody like us. And we're disorganized and we're scattered and people don't know where to find us. And we're not organized, which I'm going to change. But you know what I mean? It's like there is no other place for them to go.
Yep.
Right? So I could go the whole rest of the podcast on that one concept, but I'm gonna move on because I have promises to make here. Obligations with you people with my statements today.
Yeah.
Right? So number 3. Stack the deck in your favor.
Oh.
You need to stack the deck in your favor every deal you do. And here's what I mean about that. Always have equity the day you buy. Now, I want to clarify this because I've made this comment before, but just like the, take money out, don't put money in real estate, there's a deeper connotation to this, right? So, now on Bill's planet, my planet, this is a very specific meaning, which I don't know if I've ever really covered, right? And in such a concise manner.
Okay. So
there's controlling real estate, then there's buying real estate. They're 2 different deals.
Sure.
It's 2 different strategies, right? So when you're buying real estate, like owner financing, you're buying it. You're getting the deed.
Yeah.
Right? When you're controlling it, like a slot deal, a sandwich lease option transfer, right? Or a lease option, or just a plain old option, or an agreement for deed for that matter, you're not getting the deed. Right?
Right.
So I'm not going to get into this in this podcast, and I should probably do a podcast just on this, which maybe we'll do that next week or next couple of weeks. I don't know what we'll do. I'll see. But we did a podcast on subject to deals about 100 podcasts ago. I don't remember the number.
Right.
On the 20 ways you could make money when you buy a subject to deal. The reason why is because just like we're telling the seller, if they keep the property and they rent to us, right? They can get cash flow, they can get principal pay down, they can get depreciation, and they can get appreciation. Those 4 numbers added up on a $200,000 house to $100,000. I just told you that, right?
Yeah.
Because if they sold for cash, a $200,000 house, they would get $170,000. If they kept it for 3 years, these numbers add up to $282,000. Okay, so here's my point. Why does the seller get that money?
Why doesn't?
Because the deed stayed in their name. They're the deed holder.
Yeah, that's why they do.
Right? So when you flip it around and you do a subject to deal or an owner finance deal and you get the deed, guess what?
Yeah, you get the benefits.
You make all that money.
Right.
You make that $100,000 in 3 years. Right? Oh, yeah, by the way, when I use my calculator, that $200,000 house in 10 years doubles. It makes like $230,000. It doubles in 10 years because you got the deed. So every investor that I know, excuse me, has a transformation. Every investor I've ever met has a transformation. Some get it quicker than others. Me, it took me 20 years because I'm a dumbass sometimes, right? When you realize that you could make more money with the money than the property, life changes. In other words, if you control the paperwork and control the money that owns the property, you make more money. I'll never forget the time that I had this big realization that, like, oh my God, I was all worried about people paying me, which people, a lot of rookies think that, like, what if they don't pay? Well, I had the realization, well, I actually lay down at night and think, I wonder who won't pay me this month. And it never happens. You want to know why? Because I make more money when they don't pay. Because I get the house back, I get another deposit, I up the rent, I sell it for more money. Like, I make more money when they default. So I'm like, I hope they default. I make more money.
Yeah.
And that mental shift, because now all of a sudden you're not worried about it because you become what you resist. So if you resist them not paying, then they aren't going to pay, right? So it's the way your mind works. So if you become what you resist. So I don't resist them not paying. I'm like, I hope they don't pay because I could use another $15,000 for a down payment right now. That would make my month this month, right?
It's true.
It's like I'm kind of diverting a lot here, but it's like, yeah, anyways, I'm not going to get into that. So you have to understand that getting the deed and controlling the property are two different types of transactions. Controlling the property and doing lease options and slot deals and all that stuff is good in the beginning to get you cash flow and get you used to doing deals. But the transformation comes when all of a sudden you start thinking, hell, if I just keep this property, right, I could like not pay any taxes this year. Right? Because I just went through. I didn't pay any taxes this year. I mean, I paid taxes, but with the real estate, it changes the tax. It's the law. It's the way the IRS does it.
It's fun to go to the accountant now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you make more money when you do that. So the point that I'm trying to make here is always buy property and have equity. So if you're going to put a deed in your name, make sure you have equity. And when you look at my 7 deal strategies, it's set up that way because the top deal is a slot deal and it's no equity. It's 100% leverage. The next deal down under that, the hierarchy, is an option deal. So you need to get 10% worth of equity. The next deal down from that is a lease option deal, which is when you stay in the deal. You stay in a lease option. You lease option from the owner and you sublease it to the buyer. You need 15% worth of equity. All 3 of those transactions, you could get into those transactions and totally screw it up and then walk away.
Yeah.
No ramifications.
Yeah. I mean, we always say, like, you're like the realtor. You're trying to sell the house, trying to make the move. If it doesn't work, you just walk away. And that's taken for granted because you're not obligated.
Now, the numbers are intentional because now the next one down is getting the deed or a subject to. And in a subject to deal, I want you to have 20% worth of equity. That was not a made-up number. That was because 20% is what most markets do. They go up 20% or go down 20%. 20% is average. Now, I'm not saying every market's like that, like Vegas and Florida. They tend to be more for whatever reason. But most of the country will go, if we have a downturn, it's not going more than 20% usually.
Yep. So
the worst that can happen is in a bad economy, you owe what it's worth. You didn't lose money, right? So that's what I'm saying is when you put a deed in your name, make sure you have equity the day you buy it.
Yep.
Or know where you're going to get equity. Like in a slot deal, if you're going to do a deal in a slot deal, know that where you're going to get your equity from. But equity is important. You need to know that equity is another word for profit. The rest of the business world, it's called profit. Mm-hmm. In the stock market, it's called yield.
Right.
In business world, it's profit. In real estate, it's called equity. It's all the same. It's the difference between what you owe and what you get paid, right? Mm-hmm. So does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, good. So number 4, and this can't be understated or emphasized enough. Outflow controls your income. I'm talking about reaching sellers and buyers and enough volume to make a consistent monthly income. Mm-hmm. This is the number one reason rookies don't get going. They don't do enough outflow. They think talking to a seller once a month is going to make them free, or getting on the phone once a week and talking to a seller for 15 minutes is going to give them freedom. Mm. This one rule is what makes or breaks the pros from the rookies, because the pros do massive outflow, right? And if you're not out there talking to sellers, telling them what you do, which is buy houses or rent houses, right? Asking what is needed and wanted and then giving it to them, aka the offer, you're doomed, right? This one rule alone, once you understand it, can take you from the pits to the Ritz overnight. If you're not outflowing enough, you're not doing it. Mm-hmm. And this is the number one, absolute, positively freaking reason why not enough people make consistent deals. They have just not figured out the outflow. How to contact sellers. Does that make sense? There's just not
unfortunately,
enough of that
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to come back to this in a minute. So number 5, is that clear? Am I okay so far with what I'm talking about?
No, that's very simple.
Are these rules making sense? Do you understand why they're so important? They're like the foundation.
Yeah, well, it's the thoughts that leads to what you should be doing. Like it's like a plan in your head, or how things work. It's the reality of things that if you don't follow those, you won't do the right things.
Well, I can tell you right now, if you're going to make a business plan on having creative real estate be your main income, if these 7 things are not in that business plan, you won't do it.
Yep.
I can tell you that point blank. You will not. You won't make it. Don't even try. Mm. Okay. All right. Number 5, making offers. Mm. As I so meanly say often, if you aren't making offers, you have an expensive hobby. Okay. Now I have attention on something here because I talked about outflow. All right, I'm going to just keep going, and if I don't cover it, then I'll come back to the outflow thing. Okay.
Yep.
So if you're not making offers, basically, you have a hobby. You're like looking at houses on the MLS, or you're driving neighborhoods, or you're talking to sellers. You're looking for leads. You're like doing research. You're learning. You're listening to this podcast. You're buying courses. You're reading books. It is all null and void if you don't make an offer. Hmm. It is completely, utterly, absolutely, freaking, I wish I could say the right word, freaking useless if you don't make an offer.
Yeah.
Peter, we got away from this. I got away from this. And you should reprimand me for this. Literally.
I was reprimanding me. What are you talking about?
I used to say this all the time, and I stopped saying it. An offer a day keeps the dead away.
Yeah.
This is the mindset of someone like me, right? you wake up, and I go through this too, because I'm going through this right now with you, because I'm off on my sabbatical. I'm not paying attention to us making offers, and we're not making offers, we're not buying houses.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I get a hair across my ass, and I wake up in the morning, I'm like, okay, who can I make an offer to today? Right? If you woke up each morning thinking, before I go to bed today, it's like, if I don't go to bed tonight, if I go to bed tonight and I don't make an offer, tomorrow morning the Gestapo is going to be at my front door and they're going to take me to jail. And my life is over. It's like, if it's not that strict in your mind, it won't happen. Because I have to tell you something.
Yeah.
Another diversion. We don't have time to make any more diversions. I have something really weird going on in my mind.
And you just found out?
Yeah.
Boom, boom.
It's another one of those things.
What
right?
is it, Bill? What is it, Bill? What's today's?
I have a lot of attention on attention.
Huh.
I have a lot of attention on people's environments. Like somebody said, I forgot who said it, but it's like the main 5 people in your life is what you'll turn out to be.
Ooh, that's so scary.
Right? So I have a lot of attention on attention. And I'm not going to tell you the reason why and who's provoking this. I'm not going to tell you that because I don't want to admit it. But they are very close to me. And I noticed that the environment provokes what you think. It interrupts what you think. So if you're walking down the road or you're driving down the road and somebody cuts in front of you, you're no longer going to where you need to go. Your attention went on, oh, I have to get around this person.
Mm-hmm.
It's a diversion. So now all of a sudden your mind goes into the process of thinking, how can I get around this person? Instead of thinking, how do I get to where I need to go?
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference. Or thinking, when I get there, that's what I got to do. It diverts your attention. And I realized that if you're not protective of your environment and you're not protective of what's influencing you, you're screwed. So if you wake up in the morning and say, who can I make an offer to today? And you don't make it a priority or importance, next thing you know, your kids or your spouse or your boss have diverted you from making that offer, and you get to the end of the day and you're like, not only did I not make an offer, but I never thought of it all day long.
Ooh.
I forgot about it.
And
holy crap.
That's why you're talking about attention.
Because your environment grabbed your attention and took it off of, how do I make that offer? It's kind of scary, right?
Well, it's,
your
your
thoughts are random.
Yeah.
Your thoughts are provoked on what's in my environment. Is it dangerous? Is it safe? Is it pleasurable? Is it whatever? So the pros have a very good idea of what they want. They have a good idea of orchestrating or constructing their environment and making it so it's conducive to what they want to get and not have all the interruptions. Right?
That's true.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you read books about successful people, they always have, like, when I get up in the morning, and they have a list of what they do to get themselves situated and on the right track.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, hang on a second. I just want to read a couple things because. Okay. I see what I did. Okay. So, the other thing that happens, which I don't want to get into, we could do a whole seminar on this. You say to yourself, I want to make $25,000.
Mm-hmm.
You put that idea there, that affirmation, that postulate, that agreement, that solid, like, I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you do that, Peter, what's the first thing that happens in your mind?
Well, most people, maybe everybody, thinks either how can I do it or I can't do it.
how the hell am I going to get 25,000?
Yeah.
I mean, you make $75,000 a year, and you're telling me in the next 30 days you want to make 25,000.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I do. I'm not going to go over this in great detail. I'm just going to tell you what I do, and if you feel like I want to cover this topic, send me a support ticket, and we'll do a podcast on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If you don't send me a support ticket, I'll just move on, and I don't have to show you how I do this.
Mm-hmm.
I run a list in my head. I do on and off. So it's like, okay, so I want to make $25,000 before this date.
Yeah.
And then I ask myself, what are you thinking right now, Bill? Remember we talked about this.
Yes.
What are you thinking right now, Bill?
Yeah.
Oh, what am I thinking right now? Well, I'm thinking, well, how in God's name am I going to make $25,000?
Yeah.
And I look at that and I say, okay, and I flush out what I'm thinking. Then I ask myself again the repetitive question. Okay, I want to make $25,000. And then I think to myself, what am I thinking now? And the next thing is, oh, okay, so what are you going to do with the $25,000? And then I handle that. And then I go on to the question again. And I say, I want to make $25,000. And then the next consideration comes up. And I handle that. And I do this privately without distractions. It's not meditation or anything like that. It's just a thing I do, right? I do it sometimes when I'm driving in my car, and it works. Mm-hmm. By the time you get to the end of the list, you've handled yourself on all the considerations. Because you just keep going until you're like, you know what? I could really make $25,000. Mm-hmm. And it works. It works amazingly.
And you sitting there in that room right now talking to us is actual proof of it.
Yes. Because this $25,000 is exactly what I just did a month ago. How could I make $25,000? I did this drill 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it just landed in my lap. Okay?
Yeah.
A little bit profound there. And if you want to hear more about it, Mr. Listener or Mrs. Listener, send me a support ticket and I will do a whole podcast on it. Okay? Number 6. Way too many people do not, capital letters, do not focus on the deal structuring so they have money now, money monthly, and money later. They're all worried about what to say to the customer and how they sound and are they professional and all this stuff. They forget about money now, money monthly, money later. This is where actual real estate wealth is built. One brick at a time. Money now, money monthly, money later. They're so anxious about trying to get a deal, they forget about they can choose which offer to make. And they can structure the deal the way they want to make the deal. They forget about that. They're in propitiation, meaning you pay somebody, you give somebody gifts to like you. That's propitiation, right? They're in propitiation with the seller. Like, well, I could do this, and they're like, it's like standing in the middle of the yard with a bag of chicken feed and just throwing it all over the place so the chickens can eat. Like, they let the chickens let them just go figure out where to get it from. Right? And that's the way it is when people talk to sellers. They're just like throwing the seed out there and like, let's see what will get them interested. Let me try this and let me try that and let me try this. Instead of going back to the beginning of this podcast and saying, I'm giving you an absorbent benefit here. Let me explain it to you. Mm-hmm. By dealing with me, you are going to flourish and prosper. You are going to do something that most people have not told you could even do with real estate because the rich people don't tell you how to do this. The people that have a lot of real estate, that lady that I had lunch with that has $200 million worth of real estate, there's a reason why she's got $200,000 worth of real estate. It's the way she thinks and her attitude towards life and the distraction-free environment that she has. She tells me because she's in a restaurant, she says she goes home at night and she locks herself in a room, and as a lawyer, she reads contracts, leases, like for Target and big shopping malls that are 68 pages long and 138 pages long, right? She reads these leases for clients and learns so when she writes her own leases, how do you think her leases are going to be?
So that's what helped her do this, because her job got her. So that's who she's hanging around with. That's the people in her
Do you
environment.
get it?
That's
Do you
that's
get
the,
it?
That's the people she knows.
Do you get it?
So like,
Does it click now?
yeah, which is why people join mastermind groups. Why people try to get into your space. I talk to Bill. I'll call Bill. I got a house I can buy in Burlington. I'll call Bill because sure. Yeah, okay. Well,
It's who you surround yourself with, the environment that you're in, and the focus on what you actually believe, right?
yeah.
So like I said before, one of the biggest problems is people's attention units are scattered, or they don't use intention with their attention.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
They don't,
yeah.
The attention is like the horsepower. The intention is what pushes it. It's like the attention is. It's like if you understand electricity, that's the amps, that's the power, and then the intention is the volts that pushes the power through the wires.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what it's like. So attention is the thing that you want. Intention is what gets it there.
Okay.
Right. So there's a difference. You have to have attention and intention and focus. You have to have a wire to go through that's very regulated on how you get there. Right? Well, it's kind of interesting, isn't it?
It is.
6, way too many people do not focus on their deal structuring and money now, money monthly.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? So they don't use this little simple formula. Right? Money monthly. So money now produces chunks of dough that you can use for like paying debt, go on vacation, pay down college fees, whatever you want to do. You get 20 grand this month, and you can go do whatever you want with it. Right? Once you have your set aside money there. Right. Money monthly is what fires bosses and takes folks out of the rat race. Right. And money later is your equity or your profit, which gives you big chunks of profit for your retirement. I mean, the way I'm doing it right now is I'm only 60, but I sold a bunch of houses when the market was really good in 2021 and 22. And instead of going and buying new houses, I had the realization, why don't I just pay down my mortgages? So I have half the amount of houses I had before, and I'm making the same amount of money because there you go.
Well, my little formula is you can either increase your cash flow or reduce your payments. So reducing your payments is the reverse of you don't need as much cash flow because you don't have all the debt. So one way or the other, you refinance or pay things down, you get to keep more of the money, pay things off, and you wind up in better shape.
Okay. So we're at the hour right now, and I'm going to take a couple more minutes. So I know that it's a little bit longer than the hour, but this is probably the most important part of the podcast.
Oh.
I should have started with this, but I had to get you up to this point.
Okay.
Okay. So the last thing is automation. This is a big thing in creative real estate right now. Automation. Right? So you can work on your business or you can work in your business. This is where we talk about the Ben Hardy, Dan Sullivan book, Who Not How. Right? I think we've taken it a step further because I don't want to hire who's, but I don't want to do it myself. Right? So, when you hire a who, most people don't. And to Ben Hardy's point in the book and Dan Sullivan's think, right, is you got to get something done. So instead of saying to yourself, how do I do this? You say, who can I do this? Who can do this for me? Because the right who will know how to do it and just take it off your plate. If you try to figure out how to do this, then you get into all the mechanics of it and you end up having to study about spreadsheets and software and, lead finding and how to set up phone numbers and, all the crap that you really don't need to know how to do, except if you're going to run a phone company or run a lead company or, so you go off and you try to study all these other things. We did a podcast on that not too long ago. Why this is what knocks rookies off is they're spending all their time trying to learn all these stupid things instead of just trying to figure out who can do it for them and make them money, right?
Yep.
Who's build wealth and save their time, right? How steals their time and their freedom, right? So here's what I'm trying to point out. Outflow. You got to do, since COVID, you need to do 5, I think maybe 10 times the amount of outflow we used to have to do.
Seems that way, yeah.
So we did a podcast just recently. I don't know the number. I should have wrote it down. But we talked about the difference between leads and engaged leads.
Mm-hmm.
So what you need is engaged leads, people that are willing to talk to you about their property, about letting you control their property and keeping their money in the property. Right?
Yeah.
You need that. So what we did is we figured out that outflow, which, by the way, I'm going to change that because right now we're texting. So what I want to do is I want to change that, kind of like we used to do yellow letters and we used to do signs, and we no longer do that anymore because it got overused and it stopped working. So now we're using texting, and I think texting got overused and it's not working. So I figured out a way where we can actually make automated phone conversations to actually start calling sellers and talking to them without us talking to them. And without a VA.
Scary.
With automation.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So I actually have a meeting with that tomorrow night with the guys that are going to help me with that. So here's my point. When you're outflowing, you need to figure out who's engaged and who's not engaged, which we used to call prospect and a suspect. Mm-hmm. Right? So the automation has to be able to do that. But there's a certain point where automation doesn't work anymore, and you got to come back to human.
Yeah.
So we figured out is the automation is good for asking, do you have a house for sale? And then it asks, do you want to make an offer? And then it asks, can we talk? Those are the 3 litmus tests on whether somebody is going to engage or not. This is how the pros are doing it now. This is how they get massive outflow. This is how they find deals, because they're letting automation do the outflow for them and cull through the shaft, as they say, right, the wheat, and figure out who raises their hand and says, I'm interested, and who doesn't.
Yep.
If you're not doing that, you can't survive in creative real estate right now. You just can't survive. If you don't have that set up, you can't survive. Which is the reason why we created creative REI Replay, because it does all of that. I don't think that I could do real estate right now without that tool. I can't go backwards now. It's like an elastic band. You stretch it and it never goes back to the same size, right? Mm-hmm. It's like I can't go back to doing what I used to do.
Yeah, it's supposed to work, but environments change. And, I tried signs, I think, a year or 2 ago, and then it's just different. One day, Paisley ties will come back, and letters will come back, and signs will come back.
It's all cyclic. But,
one of these days.
The point is that, Creative REI Reply, there's a demo. I put the link in the chat. There's a demo that we show you how to do that. And I'm not trying to sell it to you right now because it's like, I do that in other places. I don't need to sell you Creative REI Reply, but I do need to let you know that there is no other choice. Right now, we're a monopoly in creative real estate because we are the only ones on the market that are doing what we're doing. Mm. Nobody has the tools and the automaticity, right? Like we put leads in your account every day. We text them with the right campaigns. We have AI that responds to those. And it calls out who's good, who's not good, and makes you an appointment. You get on the phone, you talk to them, you humanize it. You put some numbers in a calculator. The calculator automatically tells you which deal it is, which is good by a red, yellow, or green light. And when you pick the deal and you cover it with the person, and all the scripts are in there, all the checklists are in there, everything's in there. So when you're talking to the seller, you don't sound like a babbling idiot. You sound like a pro. Once you make a deal with the seller, you just push save, and all the paperwork is just drafted for you. And you send it to the seller, they sign the paperwork, and you're ready to go. I mean, there is nobody that is doing that on the market right now. Nobody. And it is actually insane how we've taken the beginner steps of creative real estate out there. And oh yeah, by the way, there's checklists in there. So once you get a deal, you can go through the checklist. There's training in there. There's me talking to sellers in there. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And it's not overwhelming. You don't need to go in there and study. What you need to do is go do a deal, get started on a deal, and just follow the checklist so that when you're stuck with something, you're like, how do you do that? You go into the training and you just train on that one thing. You know, if all the other stuff you know how to do it, you don't need to train on that stuff. Just do what you don't know. Anyways, that's my pitch, which I don't mean to do, but it was designed this way because of all the things that I'm talking about today. So I know we went 10 minutes over today. I hope you enjoyed what I had to tell you. I hope that you understand that the 7 rules are a major factor on you being successful. And these 7 rules, if you ingrain them in your mind, right, and you just understand them the way we talked about them today, will make you successful. These are the successful actions that you need to actually start doing deals consistently. Do you agree?
Absolutely. You can't argue with any of those, but keeping those all in mind is important.
Yep. All right, cool. So we're over now. Don't forget to subscribe to us. Leave us a review if you so desire. Flipping Houses for Rookies. There's a bunch of free stuff on that site if you want to go there. There's free courses and videos, and I know that there's a creative real estate 101 package there that you can get a deal in 14 days if you go sign up on that email list. There's all kinds of crazy stuff there. And if you need a support ticket or have any questions, go ahead and shoot it to us. Otherwise, we will talk to you on podcast number 379. Flourish and prosper. Have a good week. Over and out.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.